Welcome to AFINNity, a conversational podcast series that shares the thoughts, observations, and insights of professional marketers working within teams of specialists worldwide. Hello and welcome back to AFINNity. Today we're going to be talking about beyond vanity metrics. What's the future for integrated campaign management? As clients still put out RFPs that include vanity metrics as KPIs such as AVE, we ask, what is AVE? What does the future look like for measurement across PR and integrated marketing campaigns? My name is Elliot King and I'm in London.
I'm Jonathan Matthias, also in London.
And this is Safina in Singapore.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and Safina, for being with us today and discussing this interesting topic. And I know you're both experts on this topic. So let's start off then. What are vanity metrics? And more specifically, what is AVE and what does it stand for?
I'll take that one, Elliot. So AVE stands for Advertising Value Equivalent. And that's an old way of evaluating the value of PR coverage, because how it works is it literally measures the space that some earned PR coverage takes up in a publication and then calculates, based on the advertising rate of that publication, how much it will cost you for that space.
Yeah, understood. So it's a measurement for the equivalent value of media coverage that's earned as opposed to paid for via some sort of advertising campaign.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's been around for a long time. The first thing that I did in my PR career was develop a way of automating some of the measurement of that. The clients wanted that. The clients used that to calculate the value of the work that we were doing. The success of the campaign was measured on the advertising value equivalency that we could do. Now, over the years, even at that point, which is nearly 20 years ago, the industry was moving away from that. It's not a good measure of value of PR coverage. It's not the same as buying space, because anyone could just buy that space at any point. And that actually kind of, predates even really when we were talking about advertorial. Advertorial kind of fulfills that space, if you like. But the industry's moved away from that. There's been a lot of work around re-educating the industry that this is not a good metric to use, that it is superficial and it is not a good indicator of the value that the work is providing.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, an earned piece of content and genuinely interesting article that's in a publication, I'm guessing readers are going to be far more engaged with a piece of content like that than what would be a sort of overt advert, or even an equivalent.
You can't compare those two things. And that's why we've moved away from that as kind of any kind of industry standard.
Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned a piece of paid content as opposed to something that we pitch and earn. The value is different. So what we used to do as well is that just based on that principle, we actually multiplied the AVE that we have calculated by 3. I personally have not figured out why it's 3, but it's our way of making that difference between the paid and earned one. But even that, I guess, is arbitrary, right? It's not very enough, and it doesn't tell us a lot of things on its own. And that's why, we're seeing measurement moving away from just AVE to a lot more of the things that we are now able to do, such as some of the metrics that we can get through digital dashboards and platforms.
But I guess moving on now to the current landscape, we've still got plenty of channels and plenty of campaigns where we can't really get direct management. And I guess where vanity metrics are still a feature. So what does the current landscape look like in your opinion?
Well, when it comes to vanity metrics, there are actually quite a few things, and isn't necessarily, something that doesn't serve a purpose for us. Vanity metrics can include things like number of followers, number of likes, website traffic as well. But these are all on its own. It indicates exactly just that. How many people are following my account? How many people are liking my photos? how many people are checking articles out, on my website, and it doesn't tell you much apart from the fact that there is response from the content that you have put out. And these days, however, we don't just want to know that there is a certain content that appeals to people. We also want to know the kind of behavior that we have been able to insight from engaging in such content. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot more awareness out there that any communications campaign must make an impact to the business goal or the campaign objectives. And we are moving towards that kind of measurement. We want to understand, how our activities are contributing to the outcomes of any business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Jonathan, I know that you're a senior partner in the Global Research and Insights team. So I guess this tackling vanity metrics is something you're dealing with on almost a daily basis.
So one thing I would say is that the term vanity is obviously got negative connotations here, but some of the things that we're talking about, like page views, engagement rate, number of followers, they are not necessarily bad pieces of information. The problem comes when you focus on any of these as a single measure of success. And really where we need to move to is an integrated approach where all of these data points that might alone be vanity metrics provide a more comprehensive view as to the success of a marketing campaign, and to go further than that, meet wider business objectives that might be related to sales and retention. So it's about not just, we don't want to say that individual metrics that are vanity metrics are bad. They're not. It's about combining this into a view of the wider performance.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it sounds like if we can pull data from these various campaigns, from various channels that are having different metrics, and we put them all together in some sort of centralized place, we can start to move towards a point where we're giving marketing and comms leadership a holistic view of everything that's going on, and they can make changes to a campaign and understand the impact of those changes, not just on the campaign itself, but on the wider strategy. Must be a place where clients are quite keen to get to. How easy is it to set something like that up?
It's not easy to do. It's not something that you can do outside of the box. It requires information from lots of different sources that have lots of different stakeholder involvement, but it's possible. And yes, it's about arriving at this holistic and persistent view. You need to collect this information over periods of time to identify trends, to see the impact of individual activities, and to learn from that so that you can improve performance over time.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. Well, listen, I know that both of you are working on global campaigns and campaigns that in most cases are touching multiple markets around the world. I'm interested to hear from both of you. How much differentiation is there in the types of metrics that are important, and I guess the results of those metrics, vanity or otherwise, in different parts of the world?
Well, across Asia, just in terms of the kind of metrics that we measure, it's not that different, among all the markets. However, there is, a difference in terms of understanding of the different types of metrics that can be covered, or what's more important. Because in certain markets, for example, in Singapore, is a market with a very small media pool. And so qualitative analysis becomes very, very important, because otherwise, the numbers are not going to measure up against a much bigger market. And then you have other markets where, for example, in Indonesia or China, where the media titles are really vast and many different types as well. And for this one, we want to understand, what would be the quality of the coverage that we've gotten? What are the sentiments of the articles that have been written? So a little bit more of an analysis into the kind of trends that we're seeing in the coverage.
And what I've seen is over the years, there's actually been a decline in asking for things like AVE, which is a positive thing. There has been an increased expectation for us to deliver dashboards, to deliver integrated reporting as much as we can. So the industry is definitely moving in the right direction, and they're looking to us to provide that detailed view and actually move away from some of these vanity metrics as indicators of success towards more mature KPIs for the evaluation of campaigns that are going to be related to the overall business objectives.
I think that Johnson touched on, a challenge that is universal. I think as far as measurement is concerned, it's really about the attribution, but we need to see it together. And we need to put some, analytics to it, and we need that trend inside for us to understand whether, all of these activities together is actually impacting the end goal that we're working towards.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is that clients are increasingly understanding that although vanity metrics are still a feature, it's the impact that they have on business outcomes that's the most important thing. And then the other thing, Jonathan, that you were touching on is clients are understanding that campaigns don't live in a silo. It's actually their impact on the broader Marcom's strategy that's important. So I've got a question here that says, what are clients asking for? But what I'm actually think I'm hearing from both of you is that there's lots of different clients asking for lots of different things, but there's a general evolution towards this understanding of campaigns need to be directed towards business outcomes as opposed to vanity metrics. In addition to that, campaigns work holistically together to support, in the case of international companies, a global Marcom strategy, and then campaigns need to work to meet the objectives of that specific campaign, but they also need to have a positive impact on the global strategy. And then, Safina, you were touching on some of the localization issues. So although we might have a global strategy with a global measurement framework, it's actually, there are in some cases significant tactical differences in different markets around the world. So as a globally integrated Marcom's team, how do you address these challenges? How do you give clients what they want, but also move them towards the direction of travel that we know will be optimal for them?
Well, what we are able to do is both of those things at once. So with the more holistic analysis and dashboards and the persistent view, we'll never present that in a way that's going to be confusing. We want to make the insight and the measurement accessible. So some of these metrics you will see, we will prioritize some of those to give that initial indication of performance of some of the campaigns, some of the individual pieces of content, some of the messages that are important to the strategy. But it's important that we then also are able to back that up with this more holistic, integrated view of what the whole picture is.
I think across the different markets, right, especially in managing multinational corporations, the baseline measurement must be the same across all markets, even if that means a certain type of vanity metric or just simple measurements like number of clippings or share of voice, something that media monitoring tool could have pulled out, that still needs to exist because that gives a baseline for, all the different markets and a starting point. And then we layer that with something that is a little bit more, leaning towards qualitative, insightful measurement. For example, for clients in Asia now, we introduced the FinRun score that not just covers, the number of clips, but also look 3 different, important measurement that is attached to the outcomes. The 3 measurements are reach, relevance, and reputation. So it covers not just the number of clips, but also whether the messages that the company wants to put out are covered, as well as whether this resonates with the audiences in each market. All of this we define together with the clients. And that will then give us not just the fact that, we got this number of clips or this number of eyeballs on our articles, but we also understand whether, the message that we have put out would have resonated or would have achieved the kind of outcomes that we want in the different markets.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So what I'm hearing then is this Fin brand score and the 3 Rs that you spoke about is a way of aggregating lots of quantitative data and pulling it together into a format that's easily understood and read. So how do we overlay that with the sort of qualitative feedback? Is that just a function of the relationship that we have with our clients and some sort of written monthly report? Or, is it that, or is it something else?
It is a lot to do with, the partnership that we have with the clients, and each of the different markets have a certain definition. Because the thing is, in terms of, marketing or their kind of business goals, it's also different in different markets, right? A more mature market, then, their objective will be a lot more different with a certain solution. Whereas they can be in markets where they are nascent, they are just about to educate people on, what the brand is and what kind of problems they can solve for their customers. So their communications goal will be different from their, other colleagues in the mature markets. So with that in brand score layer, we are able to define this tailored, objective for each of the different markets. And then that gets built into the 3R framework, and we're able to share with them a brand score that not just takes into account whether they have garnered a certain volume of visibility, but also whether these are aligned with what they want to achieve in each of the different markets.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm guessing that what we're really trying to do is create a measurement framework that maps specifically the strategy of that individual client, and as we've already discussed, it's likely that those strategies vary quite significantly from client to client. So Jonathan, within your work, is there a process that you can take clients through to get them to, in the first instance, I guess, understand what they need to measure, and then secondly, actually building out some sort of framework that's actually going to work for them in the short, medium, and longer term?
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts with having those discovery conversations. What are your business objectives? What should the KPIs be of the work? And taking the customer along on that collaborative journey to work towards making sure that the focus is in the right place. And one thing that I would just add about arriving at this more enhanced, useful view of some of this information is that a lot of these metrics are often used as a proxy for other things. So just because there's lots of likes or lots of followers does not automatically tell you very much about your customers, what they really think about you as a brand. It might be that they just liked a particular piece of content, might be that their recall of who was behind that piece of content isn't there. So it's about original primary research that's going to give you the opportunity to drill into that a lot more, so that all of this together is going to give you that better holistic view of the success of your business or the visibility and traction that you have with customers.
Fantastic, Jonathan. Thank you for that. So, Jonathan, you touched on the subject of AI a little bit earlier on. I'm interested to understand not just that tactic, but trends in general in terms of measurement and the sorts of tools and tactics that are available. Can either of you speak to that?
Well, we're seeing a lot of the measurement and reporting tools that we use start to implement AI. I mean, it's fair to say they've been using AI for a long time to look for trends in data and present that to you. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's not so good, not so helpful. That's why it's always been the case. It continues to be the case. You must not take things on face value. And as a researcher, I'm usually trying to disprove what I see to arrive at what is the truth of what I'm being presented with. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of AI enhancements to what we're doing, and we'll continue to see that, and it is getting better and it is taking less time. And my hope is then that time can be put into what we've talked about here, that more qualitative assessment. We're not spending as much time on the automation and the pulling together and the the way that we display this information, it's providing us the time to conduct that more qualitative assessment, to make those stronger conclusions as to what the outcome is of a particular campaign, and to make recommendations that are grounded in stronger sets of data.
And Safina, for you, are there any trends that you see in terms of measurements that are specific to APAC or beyond?
Well, I think over here, because we serve a lot of clients already with a global tool that they are using, so most times we find ourselves having to also work with those tools. So our value add is really being able to tease out the insight or intelligence that we can gather from the reports that they are already getting from global. And that can include us working with our own automation tool, or it can be us just really mapping that to the kind of objectives that they have for here in Asia Pacific.
Thank you, Safina. So what I'm hearing from both of you is the sorts of quantitative data and the tools and the tactics that vary by markets and vary by client as well, obviously. As an agency, we can get inside those clients and we can draw out that quantitative data. We can work with their tools, introduce new ones where we need to, and then use our specialisms and market knowledge to bring value to that data by overlaying it with the qualitative insights that we see. And then what we see so often with clients, once they get an understanding of the quantitative data and they are able, with the help of specialists, to turn that into strategic insights, they can then execute effectively from a creative perspective. They can differentiate from their clients. And that's so often when they find themselves making progress against their competitors and against their specific business objectives. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. You've been listening to the AFINNity podcast, brought to you by Fin Partners, specialists working in offices worldwide. Now we'd love to hear what you think. Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments here or send us an email. You can find all of the contact details at finpartners.com.